Episode 75, special guest Amanda Louder. Hello there, my beautiful friends. I am so happy you are here with me today. I have been looking forward to today's episodes for several months. Today, we have one of my life coach colleagues joining us, and I promise what we are going to be discussing is going to pique your interest. So I discovered Amanda on Instagram and I started listening to her podcast almost immediately. And she has so many great tips and just so much information that you are going to want to know about. And I am so thankful for the work that she does and for the good that she puts out into the world. So without further ado, Amanda, welcome to the Mixed Faith Relationship Podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Chris. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Well, I'm so excited, and I'm really excited for you. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So, like you said, I'm Amanda Louder. I live in Salt Lake City. I've been coaching for about 5.5 years, and I am a certified sex and marriage coach. So I help men and women and couples have better sexual relationships. I help them overcome a lot of the obstacles that come up when it comes to sex in their relationship so that they can really have a really fulfilling sexual relationship. But in addition to coaching, my husband Kevin and I have been married for 11.5 years. It's a second marriage for both of us. We have 5 kids between the two of us that range in age from 15 to 24. And we love to camp and fish and travel. I love to read. I'm a big TV movie watcher. I love my shows. And what we actually spend a lot of our time doing other than camping and fishing is watching our middle daughter play college softball. So that's me.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. And I guess I don't know if we need a disclaimer or not. If you're listening to this podcast with your little buddies in the car or something,
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure where this will go. So we are going to be Amanda is a counselor or a coach on sex. So just know that you may be
Might want to pop your AirPods in.
Yes, exactly. Who knows where we'll go, but yeah,
Who
just
knows?
a little disclaimer.
Yes.
We'll keep it clean, we promise.
Yes, for sure.
So like I said, I've Amanda's work. I started following her on Instagram I'm talking about you like you're this out of the room. The stuff that you share, it's just so insightful and helpful. And I love how you do a really great job of talking about really important things that most people don't talk about.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that I think is so with your work, I love you do keep everything very clean and I think on your podcast you talk about how this all aligns with your strong Christian values.
Yep.
And I love the work that you do and listening to your podcast and just so many things that you've helped me personally with. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for listening.
You bet. I'm always recommending your podcast to clients and friends that have stuff coming up. So yeah, good stuff. So you guys and we'll make sure to share all of Amanda's contact information. So, okay. So this is the Mixed Faith Relationship Podcast. Do you ever have clients that are in a mixed faith relationship?
Absolutely. Quite a few, actually. Yeah, it's something that we talk about a lot, whether it's themselves that are kind of going through faith transitions, or that they've, completely left the church that they grew up in, or their spouse. I deal with that all the time with my clients.
Okay. And I am, so from my going through, so I am in my own mixed faith relationship. I know for me, it was really tricky there's a lot of thinking about, sometimes we hear about the 5 intimacies. You can be spiritually intimate with someone, or physically, intellectually, emotionally, socially. So there's all these different ways to be intimate. And I noticed for me and for a lot of the clients that I talk to, intimacy is a big thing that can be really hard in a situation like this. So I would love, tell me your thoughts on that.
So I think one of the reasons why I talk to my clients so much about it is because if it's them, it doesn't matter if it's them or their spouse. Usually, if one partner is transitioning in their faith, um, they kind of don't tell their partner right away. I think a lot of times they're trying to work it out in their own mind before they talk to their partner about it. And so when they finally do talk to their partner about it, it becomes this huge problem because they don't feel the intimacy that they had before because they either haven't been known to their partner because they've had all this going on, or they feel like they don't even know their partner because their partner has had all this going on in their head. And that breaks down a lot of the intimacy that they thought they had. And so then that ends up affecting not only the intimacy, but the sex, because those two are very different things. And how can I be sexual with someone that I don't even know? Or how do I feel safe with someone that I thought we had these same values and these same belief systems, um, and we don't? And sex requires safety. And so if you're not feeling safe in your environment, in your relationship, then that can break the sexual relationship down.
And you mentioned just a second ago, I can't remember exactly how tell us, you said that there's a difference between intimacy and sex. Tell us,
Yes.
let's talk
Yes.
about that for a minute.
Okay. So the way that I define intimacy is being known and fully knowing your partner. So it's letting your partner into the inner workings of yourself, whether that's spiritually, emotionally, mentally, socially, or physically. Like just you letting yourself be known to them. And then also knowing your partner. That's really what intimacy is. And then that carries over into the sexual relationship. I mean, sex is sex, and sex can be intimate and it can also not be intimate. So that's why a lot of times we use intimacy as a euphemism for sex, but I think they're very two different things.
And I think that is so important to differentiate. Yeah. So
Yeah.
thank you for bringing that up and the clarification. Um, so what do you what are some of the things that come up with you? What are some of the topics that come up when you're coaching people in mixed faith relationships?
Well, a lot of it is just like feeling unsafe, like I said, or feeling like they don't know their partner. And when our like if you have a partner that has transitioned in their faith and you feel like you don't know them, it's very hard to be sexual with them. Like most of us we feel safe and comfortable being sexual with someone because we feel like we know them. At least within, the Christian value system, most of us are not having multiple partners, or we didn't have partners before we were married. And so it was really building that trust and that safety that led to the first sexual experience between the two of you. And when that trust and that safety has broken down, then it's a lot harder to be sexual. So that's what we really talk about with my clients is building that intimacy back, building that trust and that safety, being willing to know their partner or being willing to be known to their partner, even when it's uncomfortable. So, sometimes we only want to be as intimate as we're comfortable, right? Like we don't want to be known to our partner if we're afraid that we're going to be rejected, or if we're afraid we're going to be judged, or we might not want to know our partner if we end up knowing something that we don't like or that makes us uncomfortable or we don't agree with. And that's not intimacy. Intimacy is really being willing to know them and learning to not judge even if you don't agree.
Give us wow. And yes to all of that. Give us some, like, let's say we're in that situation. Give us some
Yeah.
tips. What do we do if we're finding ourselves not feeling, like maybe you just found out they don't believe in any of this stuff. What do we do? Where do we
Yeah.
even start? What do we do?
Well, I think it's a matter of really starting to rebuild that relationship again and understanding who they are now. I mean, even if you're not in a faith transition, like we change over time as partners. We all do that in different ways. I mean, I would not say that my husband and I are in a mixed faith marriage right now, but my belief systems have greatly changed over the last 11 years since we've been married. And even some of the things that I used to believe and I don't believe anymore, even though I would still consider myself the same faith, it was really scary for me to open up to him and tell him these things, because even though I felt safe with him and I knew he wouldn't judge me and I knew he would still love me, it was scary to open up. Like everything inside of me did not want to share that with him, even though I really did want to share that with him. And so, with my clients, I'm really helping them have these hard conversations, work on calming themselves and their emotions to have these hard conversations, whether it's, sharing themselves with their spouse or asking the questions like, okay, so you're not believing all of these things anymore. Tell me what you do think. Tell me what you do believe, because you matter to me and I love you and I want to know this new version of you. And that feels really scary. And so a lot of it is just really working on our thoughts and our belief systems and our emotions to have these really hard conversations so that we can get to know our partner again.
And I think that's one of the big things that you just hit on there, is just that connection that, and I think that's the beautiful thing about working with a coach, is they can help you figure out, okay, what am I thinking? And these emotions are going to come up. We've got, a lot of times people feel betrayed or lied to, or so many, so much disappointment and anger and grief and all those things. So, I love, it's so important that we can talk to a coach and work through those things so we can have that intimacy and that connection. Do you think intimacy and connection are they the same things, or would you describe them differently? I've never thought about that.
I think they're different. I mean, I think you can feel connected to people that you don't have any intimacy with. But so, I mean, I think, we feel connected. I feel connected to people that I've never met, right? But I wouldn't have intimacy with them because I'm not known to them and I really don't know their inner workings. I just know what I see and what I hear or what I read, right?
Yeah.
But that's different than actually really being known.
Okay, so let's spend a little minute on connection then. I think that's one of the big things that that my clients, they just feel like they're not connected anymore. They don't have this spiritual connection, it's like we had all this in common and now we don't. What do you see with that? Give us some tips on that?
Well, connection, we think it's just like there or it's not. And you and I both know that connection's a feeling, right? So it's created with the way that we're thinking. So are we thinking thoughts that disconnect us, or are we thinking thoughts that keep us connected? And, when we say, okay, this person isn't known to me anymore and we don't believe the same things, or we don't think the same things anymore, those are all very disconnecting. But when you okay, I still know this person, I don't know all the parts of them like I thought I did, but it's so funny because let's just say you didn't know that your spouse was having, questioning these things or transitioning into a different faith or changing their belief systems, right? But you still felt connected to them because you didn't know.
Yeah,
but as soon as you knew, then you start having all of these thoughts that make you feel disconnected. They're still the same person they were 5 minutes before they told you, but your thoughts about it changed. And so you still know so many aspects. You have a history with them. And so can you focus on the things that you do know, things that you can build on? I mean, you built that connection in the beginning. You might have to rebuild it and rebuild that intimacy in a new and different way, but it can be rebuilt and you can still feel connected to them on the things that have connected you with them for many, many years, even if it's in a different way.
Yeah, there are definitely different emotions like judgment or resentment, anger, that
Mhm.
sometimes we are really feeling, but those are not going to help us connect at all. So
No.
yeah, I am an expert on those things of how not to do it.
Yeah.
It took some time, and that I think that's how coaching has been so helpful, because it was like, okay, my goal is to connect and have this intimate relationship.
Yeah.
And when I'm feeling resentful, or another great emotion that isn't very connecting is feeling like a victim. Because when I'm
Yes.
the victim, you're
Mm.
the villain, and I'm probably not going to feel very connected with you.
No, probably not.
But that's, yeah. So just some important things to really think about if when we're trying to connect with someone. Um, okay, another thing that comes up, I've had clients say, I'm just not attracted. I'm not attracted to my spouse anymore. I've heard that from men. I've heard that from women after,
Mhm.
after they've had a faith transition.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that for a minute.
Well, I think that's fairly common even without faith transitions. I mean, it's actually it's the number one thing that's searched for that brings people to my website is I'm not
Really?
attracted to my spouse anymore.
Mm,
And that's because we change. We all change over time. And so whether it's, new behaviors or new thought patterns and beliefs or new physicality or whatever, like we all change over time. And, there are some things that we're innately attracted to or not. Like I know innately I am attracted to men, right? And certain types of men usually is what I'm attracted to. But there's also a lot of qualities that I'm attracted to. And your spouse probably has a lot of those same qualities, even though behaviors, belief systems, maybe physicality is different. So can you focus on the things that you are attracted to rather than continuing to put power and energy behind the things that maybe you are struggling with? That's always my advice.
and I love the thought, the I see is what the brain looks for.
Yes.
So when we're, if you keep focusing on, I'm not attracted to him, and you keep looking for that, you're going to find a whole bunch of evidence of why they're not attractive.
Yes, you are.
And on the other side, it's like, okay, how am I looking, like my spouse is attractive, not like just thought swapping, but looking for,
No.
what is it you do? How do you find them attractive? What are the things? And one of my favorite questions, am I willing to be wrong about this? Am I willing to be wrong that they're not attractive, or that I'm not attracted to them, and
Mhm.
to do some work on that? I think that can be so, so helpful.
Yes, I think an exercise that I have a lot of my clients go through is to build a list. So write down your initial 20, 30 things and then try to add to it every single day of things that you like, love, appreciate, admire, or are attracted to with your spouse. And when you can start reorienting your brain into the positive rather than focusing on the negative, more and more things pop up.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a beautiful, yep. Yeah, it's just refocusing and looking for, creating what we want in our marriages.
Yes.
Yes. Love it. Let's talk about garments. I think
Okay.
we're from the same faith. Is that true?
Yes, yes, I
Okay.
think so.
I was making that assumption. I'm like, actually, I don't know. I should probably find out.
Yes.
So that is, I remember my husband made a comment once about how garments were just not attractive. And I was so hurt. I was so just like, and
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating because a lot of times what I made his words mean, he says the words garments are not attractive, and I made it mean I'm not
I'm not
attractive.
attractive. Yes.
And we got to be careful with that, because a lot of times we take things personally. We make it mean something about us when it
Mm.
might not have anything to do about us. So
No.
that's a big thing that to like really check in with that. Tell me your thoughts on, so you have one spouse that is wearing garments and maybe one that's not, or one that's,
Yeah.
speak to that.
And I mean, I think that that's a pretty normal thing to think, whether you're in mixed faith or not. I mean, I have an entire podcast episode called Garments Aren't Sexy because it's something that I hear from so many women struggling to feel sexy in garments, men, having a hard time seeing their wife as sexy, even though they think she's sexy, but just in garments, it can often just be a mood killer. And so I think, your marriage is the most important relationship that you have. And if garments need to come off occasionally so that that can be an important part of your relationship, then I think that's okay. That's my personal opinion.
I think it's good to remember that um, they don't sell garments at Victoria's Secret for a reason.
No, they don't. No, they don't. And you don't have to wear them all the time.
I think that I think it was great work that I needed to look at to just check in, like, what am I making this mean about me? And we can use this with garments, with any different topic that, if our spouse says something or does something, that's a big question we ask as coaches. What are you making this mean about you? And so often it's not true. It has nothing
No.
to do with us. So yeah, to just be like, yeah, you're right. Okay.
Yeah. You're right. They're not very sexy. So maybe I need to remove them so that I can feel better about me and my body, and you can feel better about it too. And I think that's okay.
Agreed. Yes. Okay. Any other thoughts about garments that you want to add?
I just think it really is such an individual decision. And I mean, I think that, we can respect our spouse's choice to wear them, but we can also have conversations about what it does to our relationship and our sexual relationship and make some allowances for that.
Yeah. And I think that just that communication and recognizing, like, I think you said this earlier, that our goal is to connect, and this marriage is our most important relationship. How do it may look different than we grew up thinking, and like looking in at what are our beliefs about how this should all look. So I think,
yeah. So just on a personal note, like a few years ago, my husband and I were both, we would both consider ourselves, strong members of the church. The temple is important to us. Garments are important to us, but we've made the choice not to wear them to bed anymore because it creates more skin to skin time. It increases the intimacy. It increases our sex life. And not that we're going to have sex every single night not wearing them, but it really does improve things for us. And it's just a choice that we made together and we prayed about and felt good about. And so, I think it's just really important to look inside and look at your integrity and what is going to be the best choice, not only for you, but for you as a couple, rather than looking outside of you for guidance.
and I think that's such a huge thing in mixed faith relationships, because like there's the standard that you hear about, and recognizing, okay, my situation looks different. We're not on the same page with this, and figuring out and counting on, relying on that personal revelation for you and your unique situation. And that might look different for one person than it would another. So yeah, I think that's such an important thing. And like, if our goal is to be connected and to have these intimate relationships, that may look different from time to time, or than
it used to. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about children.
Yay.
This can be tricky because, like, I've got 3 kids, 14, 19, and 21. And so I am the active believing member in my marriage, and my husband those are not his things. And it's important when we're raising our kids, it can be tricky because we have different belief systems, and especially in regards to sex, how to teach them about what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. I would love to hear your thoughts about that one. We've got two different opinions or two different ways of, and I mean, that's in any marriage. It's not just in a mixed faith relationship. So,
Right. Right. Well, I think it's really important to share with your kids, mom believes this, dad believes this. But what's more important is, what do you believe? What are your values? What do you think? And really letting them figure out their own value system. Now, and value system is not like what feels good in the moment, right? But it really is like, what is your value system, and can you live in integrity with that value system when it comes to your sexuality? And that looks different for everyone. And it's hard when our kids have different values, which prompt different behaviors than we would necessarily agree with, but are they living according to their values? So my oldest son, he's 24. He has left the church, doesn't believe in God. He has very different values when it comes to sex than I do. But he knows what his values are, and he lives according to his values. They're different than mine, but I can respect that he is living in integrity with himself and his value system, even if it's different than mine. And that's takes a lot of work to get to that point.
yeah.
But while you may not agree with your husband or your spouse on behaviors or values, can you respect that they are living according to their values, or teaching the kids according to their values, and then let your kids come figure out what their own values and integrity is and live according to that? I think that's really important, no matter what faith you are.
Oh, I love that. I think it's important too. I know, like I've told my kids, so this is how I grew up. I waited until I was married, and
Mhm.
that has served me really well. I'm thankful
Mhm.
that that worked great for me, and I don't regret that. And I also want to, so I'm going to share that perspective with you. And I also want to make sure that you are safe and that you know about these
Yes.
different things, because I think that originally was my goal, to just be like, just don't have sex, just don't wait till
Right.
you're. But then and I remember when at school they had a, like in their health class, my daughter came home and told me some of the stuff, and I was just like, I was just appalled. I was mortified. And then
Yeah.
I realized after working through it, like I wasn't going to teach her some of those things. And then it made
Yeah.
me question, why am I not teaching her those things?
Right.
And also, then I realized like this is actually a good thing, because I have shared this is my perspective of what I would love for you to do. And now I'm thankful that they shared those things, because your kids don't always do the things that you're expecting
No,
them
they
to
don't.
do.
No, they don't. Well, and I heard once, and I mean, forgive me because this isn't necessarily politically correct, but it's usually not it's the good girls who end up pregnant. It's the girls who weren't prepared, the girls who never thought that they would have sex before marriage, and so they weren't on birth control, they didn't take precautions, they didn't have a condom just in case, because that was never going to happen, and yet it did. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to make sure that my kids are prepared. Like, here's my value system. I really wish that you would wait until you're married, because I think it will serve you well. But if not, I want to make sure that you're not going to, either get pregnant or get someone pregnant or end up with an STI. I just, those kinds of things are a lot more permanent. And there's always, repentance and forgiveness and the atonement. And I wholeheartedly believe in that. But you can't use the atonement to get rid of a baby. And so I want to make sure that my kids are prepared for all scenarios, even if they're not doing the behaviors that I would necessarily agree with, or if their value systems are different.
Yeah, so it's so important. And I'm glad that mean, it's taken me time over
Yeah.
I've made a lot of parenting mistakes, and I'm
Yeah.
sure I will continue
Haven't we
to.
all?
Yes. Yeah. Join the club. But
Yes.
I think, yeah, I think it's so important to, and I love the word and. This
Mhm.
is what I have chosen to do, and you may not choose to do that. So let me give you this information, and to be able to share information that is helpful and appropriate that can help them make choices in case they don't follow the For the Strength of Youth pamphlet, because
Yeah.
a lot of kids don't,
No, they don't.
and a lot of adults. Okay, speaking of that, let's talk about sexual shame.
Oh, fun. Okay.
Yeah, we're going on the big guns, Amanda. I'm bringing them all
Yes.
up.
That's good. Good.
I think it's just so important that I know a lot of I've talked to a lot of my clients that they either their spouse had a lot of sexual shame that, or I mean, maybe they're experiencing it.
Hmm.
Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah. It's fairly prevalent. I mean, unless you were raised in a really sex positive home, most of us have quite a bit of sexual shame. And some are able to overcome it easier than others. I would say just because in society in general, sex is more acceptable for men, that a lot of men are able to overcome it easier. But there's still plenty of men who hold on to sexual shame. And I think as women, I mean, most of my clients have a fair amount of sexual shame. I know I sure did. And so it's something that inhibits us in a lot of ways and really inhibits our sexuality and understanding the inherent gift that our sexuality is. It keeps a lot of women and men from experiencing that connection and pleasure through sex. And it's something that, a lot of people I know are like, well, I'm just, I'm more private. I'm like, okay, but I'm guessing that is coming from a lot of sexual shame because and not that I think you need to go like be talking about sex to everyone, and very openly and all the details of your sex life. That's not what I'm saying. But most of the time, um there's a lot of sexual shame present that keeps us from even talking about it in general or talking to our kids about it. Like if you really struggle talking to your kids about sex, that's most likely coming from your sexual shame. So it's definitely out there.
Okay, and you mentioned when you started talking about that, um, sex positive. What would that define that for everyone? What is that? What do you mean by that? Having a sex
Well,
positive
I
relationship or
mean,
a home or
yeah, I mean, being able to, talk about sex on a daily, not a daily basis, but on a regular basis with your kids very openly. Like, when there is a TV show or a movie on, are you like pausing it, fast forwarding, covering the screen? Or, when it comes on the screen, like, pausing it afterwards and going, how did that make you feel? Did you notice that feelings? Those are really good feelings. But what do we want to do with those feelings? Because we're not married. You're not married. Like those are the kinds of sex positive conversations that happen in good homes, right? It's not like, oh yeah, let's go watch this. This is so cool. That's not what I'm talking about. Like it's having good, open, honest conversations with your kids where they know that their sexuality is a good and an inherent part of who they are. And then how do they want to operate and be in relation to their sexuality within their value system? That's what prevents sexual shame.
and I'm glad that you tied that. I was just thinking that because the shame comes from thinking I am bad. I'm having these feelings that I shouldn't be
Mm-hmm.
having, where it's not true.
Yes.
We are
No, we're
that is
sexual beings.
part of
We've
the
been,
whole
It's part of who we were created to be. And I think a lot of us got the message like, sex is bad, 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 bad. Okay, you're married. Now it's good. Right. And the message that I would love for parents to convey to their kids is no, sex is good. Your sexuality is a good thing. Your sexual thoughts and feelings are good things. That's what you're supposed to be thinking and feeling at this stage. Now, how do you want to behave? How do you want to act and be in relationship to your sexuality given your values? That's a different conversation.
Totally. Yeah. And I love that. Just being, just making it a positive, good experience. This is part of who you are. This is a good thing. This is good that you have those feelings. Congratulations.
Yes.
You are a child
normal.
of God.
Yes.
Work.
Well, and I think, when we talk about, being in relationship to our sexuality, a lot of people tend to go to the extremes. So I kind of think about it like a spectrum. On one end of the spectrum is indulgence, right? You're behaving in ways that are outside of your value system. You're doing things that really either harm yourself or maybe harm others with your sexuality. And, what I mean by that is if you have a value that you don't have sex before marriage, you're having sex before marriage. You're indulging in it. Maybe it's watching pornography. Maybe, it's touching someone without their consent. Like that's really that indulgence in their sexuality piece.
Mm-hmm.
The other end of the spectrum is repression. We're not going to acknowledge it. We're going to shove it down. It's bad. And that's really, both ends of those spectrum create shame. And what we want to find is that healthy balance where I'm not indulging, I'm not repressing, I am willing to experience and feel, but not necessarily act out on it, and acting according to my values and in integrity with myself.
Love that. That's yes. Amen to all that. Let's see. I'm just looking at my other questions. Okay, you did mention pornography. Let's talk about that for a minute. I think in a mixed faith relationship, that is definitely, well, in any marriage, any relationship, that definitely could be something that comes up. I know a lot of times that when someone has a faith transition or they're in a mixed faith relationship, that there's a lot of fear, like, because now they don't believe this, now all this could happen. So we've got that going on, or maybe it's already happening. Let's talk about pornography for just a minute.
Okay. So just so it's made clear, I am not pro pornography. Okay. I don't like it. I wish it didn't exist. I also don't think it's as bad as we make it out to be. When we have been taught that pornography ruins marriages, if you have that belief system, it's going to ruin your marriage if it comes up. I think there is, I think you can definitely have a marriage without it. I don't recommend it, but I think that if people choose to engage with it, that it doesn't need to be the end of the world. I was actually just having a conversation this morning with a friend of mine that pornography has been part of her marriage, and it's been a very hard part of her marriage. And she has believed that it's going to destroy her marriage and destroy her husband. And he believes that about himself. And he's, but he still is choosing to engage in it. And he thinks that, it's an addiction and stuff, which I don't believe either. I think it's more of a compulsion. But like we just talked about, just neutralizing it. Like, it's not my favorite thing. I wish you didn't do it, but I'm not going to hound you about it. I'm not going to believe it's going to destroy our marriage. What I do have a problem with is you watching on devices that might expose our children to it. So if you're going to do it, please just do it on a device that they don't have access to, because I don't want them exposed to it. I also have a problem with you engaging with it when you could be spending time with me and our kids when I'm drowning here with our kids. Like, those are boundaries around time. Like, but you could have those same boundaries if he was out golfing for hours or, doing other activities. It's not just about the porn, it's about the time. Right. So I think there's ways to talk about it and relate to it in ways that are not destructive. but it really depends on how you're thinking. And then, again, how do you talk to your kids about it? Well, some people choose to look at these things, and here's some consequences that might happen because of it. But most of the time it's just a coping mechanism. We don't feel good, and so we want to make ourselves feel better.
Yep.
And we look at that, and then we feel good for a second, and then we usually feel worse about it. So, I've had kids that have had issues with it, and we just talk about like, okay, like there's never any consequences for my kids if they engage with it, but I make it a really safe place for them to come and talk to me about it. Okay. And talk to them like, okay, well, what were you feeling before you were doing it? Well, I was feeling bored. Okay. Well, tell me about, what does it feel like to feel bored? What could you do instead? Can you come and talk to me? Can you go for a run? Can you, call one of your friends? Can you do all these other activities? And like when you can start offering them other ideas of how to engage when they're feeling emotions that are uncomfortable and they don't want to feel, it gives them more opportunities to look for different ways to behave in those kind of circumstances.
And I think it's so important to check in with our reactions because,
Yes.
that is a hard thing to find out, like, oh, my child or my spouse or,
Yes.
I had a bunch of clients that has been their situation. So important for the spouse to allow those emotions and I think it's also important to think about our reactions to it and how we're talking
Mhm.
about it. If we want
Mhm.
our husband or spouse to be able to come and tell us stuff and we're just like, "Ah, this is a deal breaker." If we freak out, then they're
Yeah.
probably not, they're going to keep it in secret.
Yes.
And it doesn't need to be that you're like, I love, just like you said, we're not saying we're thinking this is a good thing, but when we
No.
can check in with how we're responding. And also this idea, you spoke of this just a little bit, but there's so much messaging. It's addictive. It's not, and obviously we are not saying to go look at porn. We are not saying that
No,
here.
that is not what we're saying.
And when you're thinking, if your child does look at it or they come across it and they have this thought, oh, I'm going to be addicted. Well, that is going to be so scary for them. And
For
then
sure.
they're going to feel that shame, that sexual shame. And then they spiral and end up wanting to look into it more. So being able to be a soft landing spot when
Mhm.
someone, we want to be that person that our spouse or our kids can come to, and it does, and we're not saying that you need to like it, but just
Yeah.
think about how you are reacting and how do you, instead of, if we're fueled with anger, we are going to show up not as our best selves or, out of fear. Fear is an emotion that so often that we experience. And I think, how many times did Christ say, fear not?
Right.
And if we're not coming from fear, then we can be more compassionate and curious and open and just, like Amanda was saying, like you were saying, there I go again, putting you in the other room.
That's all right.
That if we can ask questions and just have compassion, like, yeah, what was going on for you? And I'm here. I am here if you want to talk about this. How we want them to be able to talk about us instead of hiding, because shame thrives in the dark.
Yes, it
And
does.
that's where Brene Brown, I love all her work on
Me
shame.
too. Yeah, me too.
Okay, Amanda, what other questions should I be asking you?
I don't know. I think we've got a lot of it covered.
Is there anything that you want to add?
Um, I just think it's really important to just be open, like you just talked about with the pornography, but really just in general, with our spouse, with our kids, with others, like really just keep an open heart and an open mind, stay curious, stay compassionate towards yourself and them, because sometimes we're judging ourselves for our reactions and we didn't handle things well, or we wish we could have done things differently. And I think repair is really, really important. It's a thing that a lot of us miss, that step in our relationships. It doesn't have to be, if you did things years ago that you're still not, you're kind of upset about, like, it's not too late to apologize. Like, I know there's things in my past that I didn't handle well with my spouse, with my kids. And, when I come to that realization, I'll tell them now. I'll be like, do you remember this? Like, I'm really sorry. I wish I would have done things differently. And I want you to know that I'm trying to do things differently now. That goes a long way. So, if your spouse, told you that, they were leaving the church or a different church or whatever, but like, and you didn't react well, I get it. Like we tend to do that as humans.
Totally.
But if you can go back and even just repair now, like, you know what, you came to me and you were telling me something that was on your heart because you wanted to be open with me and I didn't handle it well. And I'm sorry about that. And that goes a long way to repairing the relationship that we have. Every relationship we have goes through periods of harmony, disharmony, and repair. But that repair piece is crucial in order to maintain good relationships. So that's probably the one thing I would add.
I love that. And I think we're so scared of these periods of disharmony, which we all have. I know
We
I
all
sure
have them. Yep.
that just that cycle, the harmony, disharmony, and repair, that
Mhm.
it's okay when things aren't going smoothly. And I love the 50-50. My podcast listeners hear me talk about this all the time. I love that concept that part of the time in our marriages, as parents, in our sexual relationships, whatever it is, we're going to show up as rock stars. And part of the time we're going to be a hot mess. And that's okay.
I'm a hot mess way more than I'm a rock star.
I probably am too, but but it's that none of us are perfect. And in
No.
that, the times where we're not perfect, that's where during that repair, that's where we can connect and be intimate and vulnerable. I used to be so scared of conflict and just like,
Yeah.
but I've learned that in conflict and having these discussions, that's where we actually can get closer, and how important it is to be willing to have those, when it feels disharmonious, to just be like, yep, here it is. And I'm going to do my best and go through this. And I have the opportunity to repair. And I've got the atonement of Jesus Christ. Thank goodness for
Absolutely.
that. So thankful
Absolutely.
for that. Well, Amanda, tell us, you have so many great things. Tell us where people can find you. I'm sure my listeners are thinking, I want to know more about this.
Yeah. So my podcast is called Sex for Saints. There's like almost 300 episodes. So there's a lot of information there. And it's really just about, giving you information to have a better sex life, a better marriage, better, healthy relationship with yourself. So it's all that. My website is amandalauder.com. On it, you can find information about how to work with me. I have a membership for women. I also take a few couples one-on-one. And then I do retreats. I usually do a couple of retreats a year. So I have a women's retreat in February in St. George, Utah. And then I usually do a couples retreat in the fall. So if you get on my mailing list on my website, then you can do that. And then the other place you can usually find me is on Instagram at Christian Sex Coach.
Well, you guys, I'm telling you, she's got so many great things. I'm sure you can just tell from hearing all Amanda's awesome wisdom. Yeah, go follow her on Instagram and go get on her mailing list. I'm on her mailing list. That's how I found out that she likes to do podcasts. So I'm like, I would love to have you on my podcast.
Yes.
So, well, Amanda, this has been just an honor, and I really appreciate your being willing to be here and to open up and talk about some things that sometimes are tricky to talk about. So I just so appreciate you. And I will include all of Amanda's information in the show notes for this podcast. And also, you guys, please share this podcast. If you know anyone that could benefit, please share it with them. And thank you to those of you that have left me a review on iTunes or stars on Spotify. I appreciate it so much. And it only takes a minute, but it means so much to me. So thank you for spreading the love. And you guys, that's everything that we've got for you today. And I just make a great week. Mwah.